My name is Madison Clark. I'm 28 years old, and for as long as I can remember, my life has revolved around collecting rare signed vinyl records. It wasn't just a hobby, it was my escape, my safe place. When my parents argued, when high school felt unbearable, I'd put on my headphones, drop the needle on a record, and feel like someone out there understood me. Over the last 10 years, I built a collection worth nearly $200,000, signed first pressings, limited editions, rare finds I tracked down one by one. Every piece had a story. Every piece felt like a piece of me. 2 weeks ago, I came home from a weekend trip to Chicago, tired, happy, carrying a bag of new finds, and froze the moment I stepped inside my apartment. The shelves were empty. My heart started racing, so fast, I thought I might pass out. I called my brother, Ethan, the only person who had a spare key. He answered casually, like nothing had happened. "Oh yeah," he said, "I sold all those dusty records for $50. You should thank me. That stuff was cluttering your life." $50. I couldn't even speak at first. Then I screamed until my throat burned. Ethan laughed and told me to chill out. When I called my parents, hoping they'd be as horrified as I was, they told me, "It's just music, Madison. Don't be so dramatic." That was the moment something inside me broke, and I knew nothing between us would ever be the same again. Growing up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, I always felt like the odd one out in my family. My mom, Patricia, loved order, spotless house, perfect report cards, kids who smiled on cue at church. My dad, Gerald, was quiet, more interested in the evening news than in us. And then there was Ethan, loud, charming, always the center of attention. Ethan could do no wrong in their eyes. When he got caught sneaking beer into the house at 16, Dad called him just a boy being a boy. When I brought home straight A's, Mom barely looked up from folding laundry before saying, "That's what we expect from you." I found my first record at a yard sale when I was 12, a dusty old Fleetwood Mac album. I didn't even own a turntable yet, but something about the cover art called to me. I spent 2 weeks babysitting just to buy it. That record became my treasure, and soon I was haunting every thrift shop, flea market, and record fair I could find. It wasn't about money back then, it was about feeling like I had discovered something no one else cared about. Something that was just mine. But Ethan never understood. He'd roll his eyes and say, "Maddie, no one cares about old people music." Sometimes he'd flip through my crates just to watch me panic as he handled them carelessly. Mom would sigh and say, "Madison, don't be so sensitive. Your brother's just teasing." Dad would stay silent, never once telling Ethan to respect my things. I learned early on that if I wanted my collection to survive, I had to guard it myself. I started keeping it in my room, locking my door when I wasn't home. Each time I saved enough to buy a rare piece, I felt like I was building something of my own, something they couldn't touch. Or at least that's what I thought back then. By the time I turned 20, my collection had taken over an entire wall of my bedroom. I worked 2 part-time jobs during college, waitressing at Ruby's Diner in the mornings and restocking shelves at Henderson's Records at night. Every paycheck went into 2 things, tuition and my collection. I skipped spring break trips my friends begged me to join. I turned down dates when I couldn't afford to go out. Every weekend, I drove to estate sales and flea markets with a thermos of cheap coffee, hoping to find something special. And when I did, when I found a rare sign pressing, I felt like all those sacrifices were worth it. But Ethan? He just kept drifting through life. He bounced from job to job, always borrowing money and promising to pay me back next Friday, which almost never happened. When I said no, he'd get angry, accusing me of being selfish, of hoarding my money and my records. I tried to be patient, thinking maybe one day he'd grow up. Even when he borrowed one of my records and returned it scratched, I let it slide after Mom begged me not to make a big deal out of it. The last year, though, things escalated. I had just landed a full-time job as a junior audio engineer at a small recording studio, my dream job, and rented my first apartment. I invested in better shelving, climate control, and even insured my collection. It was finally safe, or so I believed. 3 months ago, Ethan lost his job again and showed up at my place unannounced. He stayed on my couch for 2 weeks, leaving a mess and eating my groceries, before I finally asked him to leave. He stormed out, calling me a selfish snob who cares more about vinyl than family. I thought that was the end of it, that maybe some space would cool him down. But when I left for that short weekend trip to Chicago, I had this gnawing feeling in my stomach. I even double-checked that my apartment door was locked. Still, I never imagined what I would come home to. When I opened my apartment door that Sunday evening, everything felt wrong. Too quiet. Too empty. I dropped my overnight bag and just stood there, staring at the bare shelves where my collection used to be. My breath caught in my throat, and my knees nearly gave out. At first, I thought maybe there had been a break-in, that someone had stolen everything. But then I saw the sticky note on my kitchen counter. In Ethan's handwriting. "You're welcome. Sold your dusty junk for $50. Finally, this place looks normal." My hand started shaking so badly, I nearly dropped my phone when I called him. He answered with a laugh, like this was some kind of joke. "Relax, Maddie," he said. "You act like somebody died. You should thank me, you were obsessed with that stuff." Obsessed? My voice cracked. "Ethan, that collection was worth $200,000. There was a pause. Then he actually whistled.
Damn.
Guess I should have asked for more than $50, huh? That was the moment I knew I couldn't stay connected to him, or to any of them anymore. Because when I called Mom, desperate for her to at least understand, she sighed and said, "Madison, it was just music. Your brother probably did you a favor. You've been too attached to those records." Too attached. As if a decade of sacrifice, saving, and building something that gave me purpose meant nothing. I didn't yell. I didn't cry, not right then. I just grabbed a duffel bag, stuffed it with clothes, and walked out of my apartment. When the door clicked shut behind me, it felt final. Like I was closing more than just a door. That night, I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot for nearly an hour, staring at the steering wheel. The anger had burned away, leaving something heavier, grief. It felt like someone had reached inside me and ripped out a decade of my life. When I finally drove away, I didn't go home. I didn't go to my parents' house either. Instead, I booked a cheap motel room 2 towns over and stayed there for 3 days, barely eating, barely sleeping. I kept replaying Ethan's laugh in my head, my mom's dismissive tone. By the 4th morning, I knew I couldn't keep living like this, waiting for their validation, begging for them to respect me.
So I made a decision.
I called my landlord, gave 30 days notice, and started selling off the furniture and things I didn't truly care about. I quit my job at the recording studio, a job I had worked so hard for, because every corner of that city reminded me of the collection I no longer had. Within a month, I packed my car with a few boxes of personal items I kept, some clothes, photos, my laptop, and drove to Asheville, North Carolina, a place I had only visited once but had fallen in love with. It felt far enough away to breathe. I rented a tiny apartment over a bookstore, got a job as a sound tech for a local music venue, and slowly started building a new routine. At first, it was lonely. I'd catch myself looking at empty shelves and feel that ache in my chest. But little by little, things started to change. I met Claire, a bartender at the venue, who loved music as much as I did. She introduced me to a small community of vinyl collectors who didn't laugh when I talked about first pressings or rare signatures. They understood. I started buying again, one piece at a time, not rushing, just letting the collection rebuild itself slowly. And with every new record I found, it felt like I was stitching myself back together. For the first time in years, I felt free. Free from Ethan's snide comments. Free from my parents' judgment. Free from the constant pressure to keep proving myself. About 6 months after I settled in Asheville, my phone lit up with Mom's number. I almost didn't answer, but something in me wanted to know what she'd say. Her voice was shaky, dramatic. "Madison, your father isn't feeling well.
He misses you.
Maybe it's time to let this go and come home." But when I asked what was wrong with Dad, she admitted it was just high blood pressure and that he was fine. It felt like bait, a way to lure me back without addressing what had actually happened. 2 weeks later, Ethan texted me for the first time since I left. "Look, I'm sorry, okay? I didn't know those records were worth that much. Can we just move past this? Mom's worried about you. I stared at the screen, my hands cold. There was no acknowledgement of what he really took from me, not just the money but the years of work and meaning behind it. It wasn't an apology. It was damage control. Then the rumors started. Claire overheard someone from my hometown at the venue talking about how I ran away because I was unstable and obsessed with records. My parents were rewriting the story, turning me into the problem so they wouldn't have to face what Ethan had done. For a moment, I considered calling them, screaming, defending myself. But I didn't, because I realized I didn't need them to understand anymore. I sent Ethan one final text. You didn't just sell my collection.
You sold my trust.
I'm not coming back. Please don't contact me again. Then I blocked his number. For the first time in my life, I felt calm. Not angry. Not desperate. Just free. A year has passed since I last heard from my family. Sometimes I still think about those records. The rare signatures I'll never get back. The pieces I spent years hunting down. But instead of feeling that sharp, suffocating pain, I feel proud. Proud that I survived losing them. Proud that I didn't let Ethan's betrayal define me. Proud that I built something new for myself from nothing. My shelves aren't full yet, but the few records I've collected since moving to Asheville feel even more valuable. Not because of their price, but because of what they represent. Each one is a reminder that I chose myself. I've learned something powerful through all of this. You can't force people to respect what matters to you. You can't make them value your passion, your effort, your heart. But you can choose to value yourself enough to walk away from anyone who doesn't. For years, I thought family meant staying, enduring, forgiving no matter what. But now I know family is proven by love and respect, not just blood. If anyone watching this feels trapped, unheard, or dismissed by the people who are supposed to care the most, hear me when I say this. Choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's survival. And walking away isn't the end of your story. Sometimes, it's the first page of the life you were meant to live. I put the needle on a new record tonight, sitting in my little apartment, and smiled. Not because I had my old collection back, I never will, but because for the first time in years, the music didn't sound like an escape. It sounded like freedom.